5 women lie dead in Whitechapel, their bodies mutilated with surgical precision. The killer walks free through the streets of London, and the police don't have a single clue. How did Jack the Ripper become the most infamous killer in history, without ever being caught? The answer will disturb you. The year is 1888. A series of brutal murders shocked London to its core. The killer left no trace, no motive, just mutilated bodies and a city paralysed by fear. How did Jack the Ripper evade capture in one of the most policed cities in the world? The answer lies in the twisted streets of Whitechapel. You enter the gaslit streets of 1888 London. Coal smoke hangs thick in the air, mixing with the stench of rotting vegetables from the market stalls. The yellow glow from the lamps barely penetrates the gloom. The cobblestones glisten with moisture from the evening fog. Every breath brings the sharp tang of horse manure and cheap gin. This is Whitechapel. Narrow alleys twist between crumbling brick buildings, their upper floors leaning close enough to whisper secrets across the gaps. Lodging houses pack 20 souls into a room, each paying 4p for a bed if they can afford it that night. Children scuttle through the shadows like rats, their bare feet numb against the cold stone. Just streets away, carriages roll past grand theatres, where the wealthy enjoy champagne and oysters. But here in the East End, hunger is a constant companion. Women sell matches or sell themselves for 6p. Men gamble their last coins in dark corners, hoping for one more drink. The cry of a drunk stumbles from some unseen doorway. A cart horse clops past, its empty wagon rattling over the uneven stones. There is one constable for every 1,000 residents in this labyrinth. Lamplighters pass more frequently than the police. Alleys end in dark courtyards where no one goes after sunset. Watchmen avoid certain corners, knowing better than to interfere with the night's business. It is August. The heat makes the stench worse. The air feels thick enough to chew. The perfect place for a shadow to move unseen. On the morning of August 7th, a woman is found dead in George Yard buildings. Her name is Martha Tabram. She lies sprawled on a landing between the first and second floors. The wall behind her is splattered with blood. 39 stab wounds cover her body. Some are shallow, hesitant. Others plunge deep between her ribs. A frenzy of violence, but not the work of a drunken brawl. The first cuts came quick enough to silence her before she could scream. No one heard a struggle. Inspector Edmund Reed arrives to examine the scene. The morning sun lights the bloodstains on the stairs. He finds no weapon, no footprints, no signs of robbery. Just a woman dead before dawn while the city slept around her. The papers call it another tragic but unremarkable East End murder. They don't yet know this is only the beginning. Now, let's meet the first victim. The stairwell in George Yard building smells of stale beer and unwashed linen. A single gas jet flickers on the landing between floors. Dawn has not yet broken when a resident coming home stumbles over something soft in the dim light. At first, he thinks it's a drunk woman collapsed in sleep. Then his hand touches the wetness on her bodice. Martha Tabram lies on her back, legs bent at unnatural angles. 39 stab wounds pucker her chest and abdomen, like some grotesque pattern. The blade entered through her cotton blouse again and again, small punctures near her breasts, deep thrusts below the ribs. Blood pools beneath her, still warm when the police arrive. It stains the plaster wall behind her in an arch, as if someone had flung a cup of dark paint. The medical examiner notes 2 distinct weapons, a thin blade for the hesitant cuts, something broader for the killing thrusts. Death came around 2:30 a.m, when even Whitechapel holds its breath between the tavern brawls and the market carts. None of the 9 families sharing the building heard anything. No cries, no footsteps fleeing down the stairs. Inspector Reed paces the landing while constables question residents. None saw Tabram enter with anyone. A woman on the 3rd floor remembers hearing a man's boots climbing past her door much later, but she didn't look. Boots on the stairs at night mean trouble best ignored. Documents in Reed's pocket list Tabram's particulars. 39 years old, 5 feet 3 inches, Light brown hair going grey. Worked the streets when she couldn't find sewing work. Married once, but that was 15 years and 2 surnames ago. In Whitechapel, women like Martha vanish every month, beaten to death by clients, dying of cold in doorways. The papers will call it another unfortunate incident. But Reed feels the hairs rise on his neck. The surgeon confirms what the blood spatter suggests. The first stab pierced Tabram's heart. Quick, professional. Then came the other 38 cuts, some made after death. Not rage, something worse. The blade left marks between her ribs that the coroner sketches in careful detail. The angle suggests someone who knew where organs lay beneath the skin. A butcher, a hospital orderly, or just a man who'd killed before. By noon, the newspapers print 3 lines about the murder in their police blotters. Reed spends the afternoon walking the alleys around George Yard, showing Tabram's likeness to pie sellers and street sweepers. A costermonger thinks he saw her laughing with 2 soldiers near Whitechapel station. A publican recalls her buying gin with pennies. No one remembers a knife. 3 weeks pass. The August heat thickens. Tourists complain about the smell from the Thames. Martha Tabram's inquest concludes with a verdict of murder by person or persons unknown. The police surgeon keeps his notes about the differing blade widths. Inspector Reed adds nothing to his official report about how the killer worked in perfect silence, as if he knew exactly which stair creaked. Then, on August 31st, just before dawn, a cart driver finds a woman sprawled near a stable yard off Bucks Row. Her skirts are pushed up to her waist. Her throat is cut so deep the wound nearly severs the head. But it's what the surgeons find beneath the skin that makes them send for Reed at once. The pattern has emerged. The killer was just getting started. Bucks Row smells of damp straw and fresh blood in the hour before dawn. A cart driver sees what looks like a pile of rags by the gates to Brown's stable yard. His lantern light catches the polished toe of a boot sticking out from under a dark skirt. He thinks it's another drunk at first, until he sees how the woman's head nearly separates from her neck. Mary Ann Nichols lies on her back, legs slightly apart. Her brown dress is wrinkled from sleeping rough the past 2 nights. The gash across her throat runs ear to ear, deep enough to expose cartilage. A narrow sash wound around her waist holds an apron in place, now stiffening with blood. The medical examiner will count bruises on her face and arms later, signs of past violence, always temporary. This cut, though, this is final. At the police mortuary, the surgeons pull back the sheet and find what Martha Tabram's killer left incomplete. 2 deep incisions curve down the abdomen. The lower one is tentative, wandering. The upper one knows exactly where to go. It parts muscle with a confidence that makes the coroner exchange looks with his assistant. This wasn't anger. This was work. Mary Ann's story plays out in snatches from those who knew her. 43 years old, 5 children scattered across workhouses and relatives' homes. Called Polly by the few friends she had left. Last seen alive by a fellow lodger at 2:30 a.m, laughing about how she'd earned her DOS money already. Proud she wouldn't have to sleep on the cobblestones again. Inspector Spratling walks Bucks Row as morning comes. The stable hands woke to nothing. The night watchman heard no screams. Only the blood tells a story. A rivulet running downhill between stones, pointing toward a spot where the killer must have stood. The press calls it a common street crime. Spratling reads Reed's notes about Martha Tabram's 39 wounds and doesn't believe it. A reporter from the Star visits the mortuary. He writes about the surgical precision of the cuts, how the abdominal wounds curve like a farmer's hand cutting around a pumpkin stem. The phrase appears in coffee houses across London by afternoon. The killer must have anatomical knowledge. Scotland Yard issues no statement. Mary Ann Nichols is buried in a pauper's grave on September the 6th. That evening, Annie Chapman counts 3 pennies in her palm at Crossingham's lodging house. The deputy turns her away. She's short by 2pence. Wind gusts down the alley as she steps back into the dark, muttering about finding the rest somehow. A man leans against the brickwork nearby, watching her adjust her bonnet strings. He asks one quiet question before they walk off together. The killer's confidence grows. The backyard at 29 Hanbury Street smells of wet wood and old tea leaves when John Davis comes down the stairs just after 6 a.m. He's a market porter, usually out before dawn, but today he lingers in the dim yard. Something isn't right. His boot scuffs against a patch of damp earth that shouldn't be there. Too dark, too thick. When he looks toward the fence, he sees a shape slumped against the wood. At first he thinks it's a drunk woman sleeping. Then he sees the skirts rucked up past her waist, the glint of light on something pale and slick where her stomach should be. Annie Chapman lies on her left side, legs bent as if climbing stairs. Her face is purple from strangulation. The 2 deep cuts across her throat have nearly taken her head off, but the surgeons will linger over what's beneath her skin. The killer made methodical work of emptying the abdomen, setting aside 2 brass rings and a few coins near her feet. The uterus is gone entirely. Later, the surgeon will remark that it was removed with the care of a man who'd done this work before, possibly a butcher, or someone who'd studied anatomy. Before dawn, Annie had stood at the doorway of Crossingham's lodging house counting coins in her palm. The night deputy refused her, 2 pennies short of the 4pence needed for a bed. She told a neighbour she'd go find the money, maybe at the kitchen of the Britannia pub. A witness saw her later near number 29 with a man whose face he didn't see. Just a voice asking, "Will you?" and Annie's tired reply, "Yes." Men from the nearby packing factory gather at the yard gate when the police arrive. They smoke and crane their necks, trying to see past the surgeons kneeling by the fence. One man vomits into the gutter when he glimpses the shape of opened muscle where the killer worked. Inspector Chandler watches his constables push back the crowd. He's seen worse in his time, but not like this. Never arranged, never with items set aside so neatly. Whoever did this wasn't hurried. The papers get details wrong at first. They say the killer left a handkerchief, then correct it to 2 leather aprons found nearby. Neighbours whisper about local butchers. Someone mentions a man seen washing his hands at the street pump that morning. Scotland Yard sends 3 detectives this time instead of 1. They measure blood spatter on the fence, compare it against Tabram and Nichols. One of them finds strands of Annie's brown hair smoothed down, as if someone had stroked her head after death. Annie's history comes out in pieces over the following days. 47 years old, had a husband once, a respectable coachman, before the drink took him. 2 children buried in paupers' graves. She sold flowers and crochet work when she could, other things when she couldn't. The night before her death, she'd slept on the steps of St. Bartholomew's because she had no coins left at all. From the Times to the penny illustrated paper, every editor demands answers. The Echo writes about the Whitechapel demon, and residents begin eyeing their neighbours differently. The phrase surgical precision appears in 3 papers on September 10th. Letters pour into Scotland Yard accusing midwives, medical students, even a local waxwork proprietor. The press asks why no one's been arrested. The police reply that they're following every lead, but privately, they know they're looking for a ghost. Dr. George Bagster Phillips, the police surgeon, examines Annie's body in detail. He charts how the cuts angle slightly upward. The killer must have worked from behind her, as she lay on her side. The organs were removed with smooth strokes, not torn. A handkerchief knotting her apron string shows no blood, meaning it was tied after death. These aren't frenzied cuts anymore. They're practiced. By now the pattern is undeniable. Martha Tabram showed the violence. Mary Ann Nichols revealed the skill. Annie Chapman proves the purpose. Inspector Aberline, brought onto the case, keeps his notes brief. Same man, colder this time. He sends detectives to question every surgeon and butcher in the East End. They return with soiled aprons and unconvincing alibis. On September 17th, a package arrives at the home of George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. Inside is half a preserved human kidney and a letter written in red ink. The writer claims to have fried and eaten the other half. The letters begin to arrive. The editor's office at the Central News Agency smells of ink and cheap tobacco when the post arrives on September 27th. The afternoon sun slants through grimy windows as the junior reporter slits open an envelope marked Dear Boss. The handwriting slopes oddly to the right. Red ink stains the edges of the paper. He reads it aloud to the newsroom. The writer claims responsibility for the recent women's work in Whitechapel. He threatens to clip the next victim's ears off, signs it with a new chilling name, Jack the Ripper. The room goes quiet except for the ticking clock. No one jokes about reporting ghosts today. The police receive their copy 3 days later. Chief Inspector Swanson spreads it on his desk, weighing the corners with inkwells. The handwriting shows no obvious tells, no misspellings, no tremors, just forward slanting letters penned with deliberate care. The threat about ears feels theatrical, but the mention of the last victim's uterine excision, that detail never reached the papers. Reporters fumble with excitement. This is more than crime news now. It's a story with characters. Editors print the letter verbatim, spelling mistakes and all. The Daily News runs a special evening edition with Dear Boss in bold across the front page. Men read it aloud in pubs, arguing whether it's real. Was that bit about saving the kidney the killer boasting? Or some prankster copying surgeon's slang? Then comes the postscript on October 1st, the one that will echo through history. A postcard arrives at the same news agency, postmarked before the latest murder. It mentions double event this time in that same slanted script. The writer mocks how quickly they'll print his catchy name. He signs it Saucy Jackie. Inspector Aberline studies both documents under magnification. The K and Jack loops exactly the same way in each. The writer switches from pen to pencil midway, as if interrupted. No fingerprints lift from the cheap paper. Handwriting experts compare it against hospital records. Asylum admission forms. Nothing matches. The public reaction is immediate and electric. Penny Dreadfuls sell out within hours. A music hall performer debuts a song called The Ripper's Knife before police can stop it. Groups of men patrol Whitechapel armed with cudgels and whistles. Women carry hatpins sharpened to dagger points. The name Jack the Ripper appears scrawled on walls from Spitalfields to Stepney. George Lusk, chairman of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, receives his own parcel on October 16th. The small box weighs oddly light. Inside, nestled in preserved flesh, lies half a human kidney floating in spirits. The accompanying note is written in copperplate script this time. From hell. It claims the writer ate the other half. Hospital surgeons examine the organ under lamplight. The renal artery shows 3 inches of attached tissue, precisely severed. The cut surface displays signs of Bright's disease, matching Annie Chapman's medical history. But is this proof, or some medical student's ghastly joke with a specimen jar? Reporters swarm Scotland Yard for answers. The police say little. Inspector Moore quietly notes the Lusk letter uses different grammar than Dear Boss. The handwriting shares no obvious features. Yet, both writers seem intimately familiar with anatomical terms. The press invents new theories daily. Maybe Jack is a deranged doctor, or an educated madman copying surgical texts. The Star suggests he might be left-handed based on ink smears. The Pall Mall Gazette claims he's deliberately misspelling words to seem uneducated. On Fleet Street, editors commission Ripper profiles based on the letters. One alienist argues the killer's mix of bravado and anatomical knowledge suggests medical training. Another insists the theatrical threats point to an actor or journalist. No one mentions the quiet fact known only at Scotland Yard. Several senior officers suspect the press themselves wrote the letters to sell papers. By October's end, the letters multiply. A butcher receives one warning of a Jewish plot. A clergyman opens an envelope containing locks of bloody hair. A magistrate's wife faints upon finding guts wrapped in newspaper on her doorstep. Most prove to be hoaxes, but the fear is real. The police work grimly through the chaos. Inspector Aberline keeps returning to 2 facts. The From Hell kidney showed true surgical skill, and the double event postcard arrived before the killings it foreshadowed. These feel different than the showy Dear Boss letter, more intimate, more likely from the killer's own hand. At the mortuary, surgeons make careful notes about the latest victim's missing organs. The excisions mirror textbook anatomical demonstrations. One young constable asks if they're looking for a teaching surgeon. His superior shakes his head. It could be anyone who's attended a medical lecture or butchered livestock. The knowledge wasn't specialised, just precise. Shopkeepers begin recognizing the Ripper's name before customers finish speaking it. Children skip rope to rhymes about leather apron. A waxwork museum unveils a Ripper tableau with mechanical arms that stab. The killer's legend grows larger than the facts. What unsettles Inspector Moore most isn't the letter's content, but their timing. Each arrives just as public interest wanes. Someone is carefully feeding the frenzy. The police put a watch on all news offices. They wait for their man to slip. Then, on November 9th, the fullest horror yet unfolds behind a locked door on Miller's Court. The letters stop coming afterward. Questions remain about their true authorship. But one fact is inarguable. They transformed these murders from a police matter into a myth. The name they invented still chills. The fear they cultivated still lingers. And the game they played with Scotland Yard. That was only beginning. Then, the double event. The yard behind Dutfield's Temperance Inn smells of damp hay and fresh blood when Louis Diemschitz drives his pony cart through the gates just before 1 a.m. The animal shies before reaching its usual spot. Diemschitz waves his lantern toward the darkness near the stable doors. The light catches on the toes of 2 boots pointing upward. A woman lies on her side as if sleeping, but the wet glint beneath her chin tells a different story. Elizabeth Stride's left hand still clutches a paper packet of cashews. The throat wound is clean, a single slash severing the carotid but missing the deeper structures. No mutilations follow. Her corset stays neatly laced. The killer either didn't have time or didn't care to finish what he started with Tabram and Chapman. Surgeons will later note the cut angles slightly downward, suggesting her assailant stood behind her as she faced the wall. Witnesses trickle in throughout the night. A labourer remembers seeing Stride with a well-dressed man near Burner Street around 12:45 a.m. The man had a dark coat and carried what might have been a doctor's bag. Another heard someone say Lipski loudly, an insult often hurled at Jewish residents. The stable boys recall nothing unusual. Inspector Edmund Reed arrives by 2 a.m. He examines Stride's body under the gas lamps. No organs are missing, no abdominal cuts, just that single efficient slash across the windpipe. He sends a constable to check neighbouring streets. The night air carries an odd tension. Police telegraph lines hum between stations. Patrols double near Jewish bakeries after the Lipski report. Some officers wonder if this is the same killer at all. Where are the signature mutilations? Others whisper that maybe he was interrupted. At Commercial Street Station, Inspector Aberline studies the timing. If Stride died around 1 a.m, her killer would have had just over 40 minutes to reach Mitre Square. Catherine Eddowes lies on her back near the square's cleaning shed when Constable Watkins makes his 1:45 a.m. rounds. Someone has arranged her skirts neatly around her waist. The throat wound gapes like a second mouth. But this time the killer took his time with the rest. The abdomen is laid open from ribs to pelvis. The left kidney and uterus are gone. A triangle of flesh is missing from the right thigh. Surgeons will count over 20 separate incisions, each bearing that telltale surgical precision. One diagonal cut exposes the colon without nicking it, the work of someone who knew where organs lay beneath the skin. Nearby, the killer left a clue of sorts. A piece of Eddowes' bloodied apron lies beneath a graffito scrawled in white chalk on a black brick wall. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. Inspector Collard copies the words carefully before ordering a constable to wash them away. The phrase will fuel weeks of anti-Semitic riots despite his efforts. Officers searching the square find no knife, no footprints in the damp earth, just a small pool of blood where Eddowes' head rested. The night watchman heard nothing. The square's single lamp still burned throughout the attack. Eddowes' possessions sit undisturbed in her pockets. A few buttons, a mustard tin holding 2 pawn tickets. She'd been released from Bishopsgate police station just an hour before death, sober enough to plead her way out of a drunk tank. By dawn, the papers have a new phrase, the double event. Reporters comb through the postcards sent days earlier boasting about exactly this. The timing is too perfect. Someone knew these murders were coming. Detectives sweat under their stiff collars as they compare notes. Stride's killer worked quickly, perhaps startled. Eddowes' butcher had time to arrange the body like a specimen. Same man, or 2 killers copying each other's methods. The inquest reveals stark contrasts in the victim's final hours. Elizabeth Stride, also called Long Liz, was a Swedish immigrant who'd worked as a maid before drink ruined her prospects. She spent her last evening singing at the Queen's Head pub. Catherine Eddowes drifted between casual labour and homelessness, using aliases when convenient. She told a friend she'd get money for her lodgings easily enough that night. Both women left no signs of struggle. Both trusted their killer to stand close enough to cut their throats in single strokes. Analysis of the blood trails tells a subtle story. Stride's throat bled outward in a fan pattern. She was likely standing when attacked. Eddowes' blood pooled beneath her head, already on the ground when the killer made that first decisive cut. Police surgeons measure the angles of each incision. Stride's wound tilts left. Eddowes' slants right. Could the same hand make both cuts? The officers debate it quietly over case files thick with witness statements and press clippings. Between the murders, the killer navigated nearly a mile of gaslit streets without leaving a trace. He passed the bustling Spitalfields market, sidestepped late-night coffee stalls, avoided the constables doubling their patrols after Stride's discovery. By the time police connected the two crimes, he'd vanished into the maze of Whitechapel's alleys. The press sharpens their theories. The Daily Telegraph insists the killer must be medically trained. The Star argues only a madman could commit such atrocities. Scotland Yard circulates handbills offering a £500 reward, an astronomical sum, for information leading to arrest. The letters keep coming, each more outlandish than the last. One claims the next victim will be a high-born lady. Another swears the killer is an invisible spirit. A third threatens to mail body parts to the Queen. By October's end, fear grips London tighter than the autumn chill. Vigilante groups roam Whitechapel armed with cudgels and lanterns. Women refuse to leave their lodgings after dark. The police hunt shadows. Every butcher, every barber surgeon, every foreigner with steady hands becomes a suspect. The Ripper's legend grows larger than the facts. Then, on November 9th, the killer steps through a locked door into Mary Jane Kelly's rented room at 13 Miller's Court. No interruptions this time, no witnesses, no need to hurry. The horror reaches its peak. The air smells of burnt tallow and fresh blood inside 13 Miller's Court. A landlord peers through the broken window pane at dawn, then staggers back, knocking over a milk pail. What he sees makes no sense at first. Glossy red shapes where furniture should be. The bed seems to have burst open like a rotten fruit. It takes Inspector Aberline 3 attempts to open the stuck door when he arrives. The wood creaks inward, scraping against something heavy on the floor. Mary Jane Kelly lies on her back across the bed, what's left of her. The killer worked without hurry here. No risk of interruption, no need to listen for footsteps. Her face is gone entirely, peeled down to muscle and bone from eyebrows to chin. One hand rests near her thigh, the fingers curled as if relaxing after work. The abdomen is hollowed out, organs arranged around the bed, heart by pillow, liver by footboard. The medical examiner will need 4 pages just to catalogue the injuries. Neighbours heard singing late the night before, Kelly's voice stumbling through Sweet Violets. A woman in the next room recalls hearing Mary's door click open around 3. No shouts, no screams, just boots on the stairs much later than normal. The door was locked from inside when police arrive, but examination shows the lock could be worked loose with a blade. Thomas Bowyer, the landlord's assistant, first spotted the scene when collecting overdue rent. He noticed a dark patch seeping under the door. Couldn't see through the keyhole with the deadbolt engaged. So he broke a corner of the single window pane, held up his lamp, and screamed loud enough to wake the court. Now the same lamp sits on a dresser inside, illuminating the horror in flickers. Pieces of flesh dot the ceiling. The killer placed one breast under Mary's head like a pillow. Joseph Barnett, Kelly's former lover, becomes an immediate suspect. They'd quarrelled recently over her returning to the streets. He tells police he last saw her 8 days earlier, drinking at the Britannia. Witnesses place him elsewhere, though. A relief worker describes Barnett as polite but simple, unlikely to do work this meticulous. The police hold him for questioning anyway. He keeps asking about Mary's cat. Who would feed it now? Surgeons examining the remains note something new. RAGE. Unlike the clinical cuts on Chapman and Eddowes, Kelly's injuries show frantic slashes between careful dissections. Some wounds tear rather than slice. The killer spent hours here, lit the fire to see his work, arranged parts, maybe took souvenirs. One uterus gone, the other left behind. By afternoon, newsboys shout about the Miller's Court horror on every corner. Reporters push through the crowd outside the tenement. An artist sketches the scene for Illustrated Police News before the body's removed, careful not to step in the dark patches near the bed. Dr. Thomas Bond arrives with fresh gloves and a measuring tape. He counts over 200 wounds, including cross-hatched cuts on the thighs. He concludes this wasn't just anatomical curiosity anymore. The killer knew Mary, or imagined he did. No letters arrive claiming this murder. No kidney sent to newspapers. Just silence between the blood-stained boards. Mary's story emerges in fragments. 25 years old, pretty when sober. Letters to family in Wales, debts to local shops, simple plans for Christmas. They search for a well-dressed man seen near Dorset Street that night. Some mention a medical bag. Others recall an eccentric muttering about sin. The descriptions vary too much to help. Kelly's funeral draws over 500 people to Shoreditch. The coffin remains closed for obvious reasons. The priest's voice shakes during the service. Then comes the void. No more bodies with the ripper's marks. No more mocking letters. The bloodhounds brought in to track scents fail on crowded streets. Theories bloom like poisoned flowers. Maybe he died. Maybe he was committed under another name. A week later, a doctor named Tumblety flees to France after being questioned over immoral conduct. They search his rooms, find jars with anatomical specimens. They wire Paris to detain him, but he's already sailing to New York. The file stays open. Mary's room is scrubbed and relet by December. The new tenant pays to have the bed frame replaced. Neighbours stop jumping at shadows. Newspapers move on to other scandals. But in police stations, detectives keep comparing notes. Some say Kelly's crime was too different, too personal. Others believe he simply stopped restraining himself. By spring, Whitechapel returns to its rhythms. Children kick pebbles where the press once clustered. Women still work near Christchurch Spitalfields, but now walk together. The Ripper files begin gathering dust. The name becomes a joke, then legend, then civic ghost story. The hunt for the killer truly begins. The files at Scotland Yard grow heavier each week. Names scribbled on strips of paper and contradicting witnesses. Some describe a tall man in a deerstalker hat. Others swear he was short with a sailor's gait. A woman claims he spoke with an educated accent. A vendor insists he only heard guttural curses. John Piazza comes forward voluntarily when rumours brand him as Leather Apron. He's a boot finisher, works with dyes and resins. Local prostitutes say he'd bullied them for years. Still his alibis hold. The landlady places him at home. A rabbi confirms him at synagogue. The newspapers that already printed his portrait must publish retractions. Detectives chase every Charles or Carl named in the papers. One of them, Charles Leshmere, found Mary Ann Nichols on Bucks Row on his way to work. His route looks odd when mapped. Used another name at first, but the cart drivers at the wholesale market confirm his schedule. Coincidences that prickle the neck and mean nothing in court. Joseph Barnett endures hours of questions. He knew Mary Jane Kelly's habits and how to enter quietly. He wipes his nose with a worn handkerchief. Yes, they argued about her work. No, he hadn't seen her in days. 3 dock workers remember him crying over a woman at the 10 Bells and save him with their testimony. The problem is the evidence, or rather its absence. Victorian forensic science measures cuts and sketches splatter. Fingerprints haven't arrived yet. Blood typing remains in laboratories. They collect knives from butchers and surgeons. None show recent use. No one places the same man at 2 scenes. The killer's only consistency is his inconsistency. Aberline entertains a theory about a midwife. The precision suggests medical craft. A midwife knows blood and anatomy and walks unseen. The commissioner dismisses it. The public wants a monster, not a woman with a grudge. Then comes the Duke theory. It starts with a medium who claims the killer is royal and noble. Half of London suspects aristocrats with dubious medical histories. A surgeon recalls a duke's son with strange fixations. Turns out he was hunting in Scotland all autumn. The medium changes course and says he fled to America. Swanson reviews the Mitre Square statements. Lewend and Levy saw Eddowes with a man in a cap. The description doesn't match Miller's court. The man with the black bag from Berner Street doesn't appear. The one washing at the pump after Chapman leaves no trace. Each suspect fits one piece and contradicts. Swanson reviews the statements from Mitre Square. Lewend and Levy saw Eddowes with a man in a cap. The description doesn't match Miller's court. The man with the black bag from Berner Street doesn't appear. The one who was washing himself at the fountain after Chapman leaves no trace. Every suspect fits one piece and contradicts another. Whitechapel distrusts the police. Immigrants shy away from questions. Jewish butchers patrol their streets. Women demand witnesses to speak. Reporters harass Reed and turn his conjectures into headlines. Without arrests, people invent theories. One letter claims the killer is a police officer. Another suggests a judge. Some point to forensic experts and surgeons. The more outlandish the name, the more ink it receives. In winter, the bosses admit in private they might never solve it. The ministry cuts funding. Reporters seek new scandals. Women still clench pins while walking, but the habit fades with spring. The Ripper becomes a cautionary tale. Still, two names return again and again. Not the Duke, not the midwife, not the famous American doctor. They are two shadows that cross the statements from the first inquiry to the last. Two names stand out from the rest. The asylum's admissions book is opened on the inspector's desk. The July 1891 entry records a Polish immigrant in Colney Hatch. Aaron Kosminski, 26 years old. He refuses food because he believes it's poisoned. Washes compulsively. Murmurs voices that order him to harm women. Swanson notes him as the main suspect. Evidence too weak to prosecute. Kosminski fits parts of the profile. A barber accustomed to blades. He lived in Whitechapel during the crimes. 3 witnesses identify him separately. The 3 never coincide. Police interview him in early 1889. He speaks little, rocks in his chair. He's released for lack of evidence and watched for months. The notes speak of strange behaviours. He stalks women without approaching, talks to the walls, hides knives under the floor. During that surveillance, there are no murders. In 1891, his family has him committed. There are no confessions, just the same obsession with washing and refusing to eat. He dies decades later. The file is closed with incurable insanity. Modern evidence on a shawl associated with Catherine Eddowes speaks of DNA linked to the Polish community. The sample is degraded. The chain of custody is doubtful. Science does not conclude. Then there's the American. Francis Tumblety arrives in London in 1888 with letters of recommendation from influential friends. He wears fur coats in summer and collects anatomical specimens, especially uteri in jars. He attends to gentlemen on Harley Street for private ailments. In a low voice, they call him the quack doctor. The police consult him after Chapman, not as a suspect, as an expert. His knowledge of female anatomy is encyclopedic. Then rumours emerge from a maid about jars in the basement. In November, he's arrested for indecent acts with men. A high bail is set. He pays and flees to France before further interrogations. Letters between inspectors call this a catastrophic mistake. Some point to his peculiar hatred of women, others to his sales and travels after the Kelly crime. By the time the extradition arrives in Paris, he's already sailing for New York. In 1889, an American clipping shows him arrested in St. Louis with female organs preserved in his luggage. A private detective writes that he held sessions where he claimed to channel Jack's power. When London asked to interview him, the American police let him go. Whether incompetence or the privilege of a rich man, Tumblety dies in 1903 as a celebrated specialist according to his obituary. The files hold more names. A Russian midwife with surgical training, a butcher maddened by syphilis, a royal doctor seen with a stained coat that turned out to be horse blood. What unites Kosminski and Tumblety is not the evidence. It's the obsession the police maintained over them long after. With Kosminski, the problem is absent evidence and witnesses who fear to testify. With Tumblety, the problem is status and influential friends. Modern analysis shows cracks in both theories, and yet they share traits of the likely profile. Familiarity with blades, obsession with female anatomy, to move without attracting attention. The more you dig, the more the Ripper's identity dissolves into the fog of Victorian London, a place where poverty hides the truth, privilege protects the guilty, and the police only follow the trail society allows them to see. Maybe that's why the letters cease after Mary Kelly. Not because he died or fled, but because the game was already too dangerous, the rewards too great, the watchers too present. A man like Kosminski retreats into his madness. The files remain open, the names remain in ink that never fully dries. The shadows in Whitechapel lengthen after 1888. The Ripper exposes police limits and the Empire's blindness to its own streets. There is no centralised criminal database. Fingerprints are attempted with oil brushes. Blood is noted in notebooks and not analysed. When the government offers a reward, thousands of letters arrive. Many are neighbourly squabbles. The file grows fat while the trail goes cold. Today we see clear failures. The chalk message on the apron piece is washed off before being photographed. The From Hell kidney is lost for decades. Statements are taken days later and contradict each other. The Ripper doesn't so much defeat Scotland Yard as he slips through its cracks. Still, the case grows beyond the facts. Cheap novels and plays turn it into a myth. The name itself probably originated in a newsroom hungry for headlines, and never stopped sticking. Modern books continue to debate suspects. Famous artists, secret real killers, DNA evidence that promises and doesn't prove. The real legacy is a mirror of its time, and how we look at the victims. 5 poor women called unfortunate by polite society. Their deaths force London to look at the hunger of the East End. Donations and editorials arrive. The attention fades when the murders stop. The letters reflect Victorian obsessions. Medical knowledge as status, fear of the immigrant, the theatricality of the villain. Dear Boss satisfies the taste for the Gothic. From Hell speaks to the fascination with anatomy and public dissections. Walk through Whitechapel today and the layers overlap. Where Mary Ann Nichols fell, there is a car park. The 10 Bell still raises its windows over tourists with cameras. Miller's Court no longer exists. An anonymous office occupies it. Forensic science has advanced. Modern profiles speak of local knowledge and fantasies of control and a possible medical profession. Without DNA or a confession, everything remains conjecture. The case endures because it is unsolvable. Historians point to real changes. Better lighting in neighbourhoods, coordination between police divisions, and the beginning of criminal profiling. But the victims are diluted in the spectacle. Mary Jane Kelly wrote to her family. Elizabeth Stride sang Swedish songs when she was sober. Annie Chapman kept 2 rings and a penny wrapped in newspaper. The horror is not just in how they died, it's in how easily their lives were reduced to labels. Some nights, if you stop where Mitre Square was, it seems there are still whispers. A rattling that could be memory or a delivery truck on Commercial Street. The Ripper's power was not just to kill, it was to show how thin the line between security and chaos is. Today, his name is used for any elusive predator. The term serial killer will be born a century later, but Jack the Ripper sets the template. Taunting letters, surgical precision, and the ability to vanish. The files remain open, not because they await new clues, but because closing them would be admitting that some shadows don't fade. The mystery persists because we need it, a reminder that history is also the stories we don't let go of. The Ripper's shadow still hangs over Whitechapel, not on the cobblestones or the old walls, but in our need for answers. Some say he fled to America, others believe he died in an asylum under a false name. Maybe he walked these streets until he was old, laughing at the commotion. The files remain open, not because they await new clues, but because some mysteries refuse to be buried. The victims' names fade while the legend grows. Where do you think he went? The truth waits patiently like the fog,